a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization. We're talking about a lot of money coming in from countries that were not paying nearly enough to be effective.
President Trump just wrapping the NATO summit and leaving allies stunned, not just by brokering a fragile but historic ceasefire between Israel and Iran, but by forcing Europe to pay up after decades of freeloading. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Jackie DeAngelis, along with my co-host Cheryl Casoni, is in for Taylor Riggs, Charlie Gasparino in for Dagan McDowell, Brian Bremberg in for himself. With us for the entire hour, Thomas Hayes, Great Hill Capital Chairman. Thank you so much for being here. Day 2 of the ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and Trump envoy Steve Witkoff says everything is quiet for now. Enter the Trump doctrine, as Vice President Vance now calls it. He's laying out the administration's foreign policy strategy. Number 1, set a clear American interest. Number 2, push diplomacy hard. Number 3, if diplomacy fails, strike fast, strike hard, and leave. That is what leadership looks like. No endless wars, no appeasement, just peace through strength and results. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is now nearing a record high. Confidence is back, chaos is cooling, and America is leading again. So many places to go with this conversation, Tom, but let's start with NATO. President Trump was very happy to announce that he got the other countries to pay up 5% of GDP. And so he's winning on multiple fronts here.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to go into those negotiations when you just dropped 30,000-pound bunker busters on Iran and was successful in quelling their nuclear ambitions. So I think it was very, very successful. I think President Trump has wanted this for a while. He's brought them along, and now he closed the deal as he's done over and over and over.
Charlie, you have covered Trump for many, many years. You were listening to the press conference. He covered many topics. He took questions from reporters. He is a different version of the Trump that we saw in his first term, for sure. And I just want to get your take on all of it.
I mean, listen, he had a lot to learn, obviously. He was a novice politician at first. He obviously survived a lot, including a gunshot to the head. I mean, that changes you. And you know, what we have right now is, you know, a great politician. And to be frank, he's doing a great job. I mean, I don't know how you say he's not doing a good job. I mean, he's doing a great job. And I think he's threading the needle perfectly on this war thing, on the endless wars. I mean, you know, I did hear before we started dropping the bombs, the big one. It wasn't quite the big one. It was the big one before the big one, right? It wasn't nuclear, but before we took the action we took, that people were talking about, oh, how about regime change? How about this? How about that? No, that's not our strategic objective. The American people didn't vote him to start making regime change. If Israel wants to do that, well, you know, that's another story, and that's probably for a different negotiation. Our job is to deter their end their nuclear program if we can. I believe we did. I don't think Israel. I think if we didn't really destroy that place, the Israelis would have leaked it by now. That we have to do round 2.
Yeah.
I just don't believe.
And they wouldn't have backed off the way that they did.
I just don't. It's not in their best interest to leave that hanging.
He, though, is very angry about how it's being spun by some of the other news networks. He has called them out by name. Cheryl, he addressed this during the press conference today in the Netherlands. Let's listen.
They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that, because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out.
So he is defending the operation. He had called out those news networks, as I mentioned. There, of course, was that leaked DIA report that indicated there isn't the destruction that the administration is claiming that there is. Yeah. He's very defensive about it, not just for himself, but for the people who carried that mission out.
Yeah, he called out multiple times. CNN, of course, who first broadcast that report, along with the New York Times yesterday. And today, what I thought was interesting is when he's taken the turn on his language and tone with regards to Iran. He also said this morning during that press conference that he doesn't think that we should go back to an Iranian nuclear deal. I thought that was interesting. He also signaled that he's not going to stop the Iranians from shipping oil to China. I thought that was interesting because we're, of course, trying to figure out our trade deal with the Chinese, and that would be one of the biggest wins, not just for the Trump administration, but obviously for the markets, get this tariff disaster off the table. The other thing I thought was interesting, too, is that if you look at what Pete Hegseth was saying, and this was when I was up and doing TV at 4 o'clock this morning, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was like, we are absolutely working with the FBI. We're going to root out the leaks. This is an administration that does not suffer fools lightly, and they're making it very clear that leaking to the media for political purposes is not going to really play in your favor under the Trump administration. And finally, I'll end on this, is that, you know, remember when Trump was back in Qatar and the UAE, and he was in Saudi Arabia? He said one line that I think is really driving this administration. And he said he wants to see the Middle East driven by commerce, not conflict. And you saw the Trump administration cutting deals as well for hotels. So I think the strategy, I think, is brilliant. And it could bring peace.
When he talked about China and oil, they said you wanted to essentially enforce economic sanctions on Iran. But he talked about and showed a very human side, that they're going to need money to rebuild some of the damage. And I mentioned this yesterday, that at this point, he doesn't want the Iranian people to suffer as a result of what the regime is trying to do there. Brian, the cherry on the ice cream sundae.
Ice cream sundae, yeah, banana split.
Talking about Putin and Zelensky, they had a very constructive meeting. He's going to go back and talk to Vladimir Putin. He very much wants peace in that war, too.
Yeah, what did he say to Vladimir Putin? I don't need your help with this. I need your help with you. Right? And look, that's a different conversation. Once you've done what you've done in Iran, going back to Putin and Zelensky, I think that might focus their attention just a little bit. You know, you said something really interesting, Charlie, that got me thinking. You said Trump learned a lot in his first term, and so he's kind of a different guy maybe on the world stage now. I wonder how much he has changed from his first term versus how much the world has changed in responding to him. You know, you watch him, let me just make my case, and you can disagree with me, but you watch him walking into NATO now. Those guys used to be like, oh, here comes Trump. What's he going to say? Watch out. Now they're like, we have already pre-approved a 5% GDP for military affairs, right?
Well, the one guy called him daddy.
Yeah, the Secretary General. So, you know, it's like, it's a little bit like Joe Walsh. Everybody's so different, I haven't changed. You know, I think Trump has kind of made his imprint on the world, and it's, in a way, it's sort of moving around him. He's not moving around yet.
I think, listen, there's nothing replaces victory, right? He won the election. He won it fair and square. There was no doubt. I mean, he won the popular vote as well. And, you know, I do think, though, when you survive what he survived, which was lawfare, they wanted to put him in jail.
Yeah.
Don't forget about this. And then somebody tried to take his head off with a bullet. He survived all of that. He's a changed, more determined man. I think he's much more measured. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, every now and then he loses. He obviously lost at the end.
Were you here yesterday, Charlie? Were you around yesterday?
You know, if you know Trump.
He was really mad.
Okay, so just so you know, if you know Trump like I know, that's kind of like on the light side of things when he really loses.
In private, I'm sure.
And, you know, he could be a tough guy. I will say, though, that you don't see him engaging in the fruitless arguments with the media as much. I mean, he'll cut you off. He'll say next. You just won't see him do with what was that guy's name? Jim Acosta.
Oh, yeah.
You just will not see that because he doesn't have time for it. He's got too much on his plate. So I think this is a guy that, he's found his agency, so to speak, as president. I believe, I could be wrong, but it's just my observation as a guy that watched him for so many years. I will say this, though. He is dealing with snakes. Okay? Iran is not to be trusted. You know, I really do think that we need more intelligence to make sure that we did obliterate those sites.
Well, I'll tell you, owning Boeing stocks, if you understand what those bunker busters do, these are not surface missiles.
No, I know.
They go deep down. And
but remember, they've been planning for this for how many years?
Fair point. But they go 35 floors deep. President Trump was talking about these bunker busters, 30,000 pounds. They go down
Now, was
first.
there anybody in there
and then
while they were dropping the
explode
bombs?
After.
No, I know, but was there anybody in there while they were dropping the bombs?
We don't know.
We didn't give them notice, I'll tell you that.
They're not reporting that.
And it takes, Charlie, that's a good point that you bring up. I mean, it's going to take more time satellites can only tell you so much. We've heard that from these.
And I think that was.
Pete Hegseth said you got to take a shovel and you got to actually dig to
And by the way,
see what's
that was the
happening.
problem with
Good
the
point.
CNN. The CNN reporting, and I have lots of friends at CNN. I'm not criticizing. I would love to get a leak like that, but they needed to give themselves, as a reporter, a little out here. We don't know a lot. This is the first assessment. Who knows what? I mean, there was none of that. It was like, boom, this thing's a failure.
Right. What really impressed me was when he said that America is the hottest place in the world right now. We
is
are
hot.
back.
It's
We are
100 it's
back.
101 degrees
Well, it is
outside
101
in
degrees,
New York.
but we are back and better than ever. And finally, when you see him traveling abroad, when you see him carrying out operations like this, when you see what he's doing with the economy, you say to yourself, finally, we have a leader that is respected globally and working for the American people. I mean, it's been a short time that he's in office, but he is delivering on many of the promises that voters went to the polls for.
Yeah.
I hate to throw cold water on that.
Please don't.
We can't. We have no time for cold water. No time for cold
To say
water.
the tariffs haven't hit yet.
Well,
We're gonna talk
tariff
about it. We'll talk
conversation's
about
not
it.
over just
We'll
yet.
talk about it.
But we're not where we were on Liberation Day.